There's a unique opportunity here to win Harvard's discrimination against Asian Americans. Two best-selling books. My first book is called An Inconvenient Minority. My second book is called School of Woke. It talks about how our K-12 education. Second issue is immigration. Our justice system is truly blind. Thought the Soviet Union was going to be here forever. President Reagan said no. Do it quickly and then try to negotiate it. I had to learn to stand up for myself from an early age. I'm a Christian. People will come to church. I'm youthful and principled to be able to fight the fights for all Americans. And that's why I'm running. Americans are redistricting this year. That will make it harder for Democrats to win. I'm not running just to make my name out there, but I do need to raise $200,000.
Make you the strongest candidate.
That I have experience. And you might say, how do you have experience? You're 26 years. Fight back against those DEI policies. And I got the UNC Board of Trustees to rescind their DEI framework. I have an appeal even to independents. And why? It's because independents care about education. Abraham Lincoln, he knew how to negotiate with people. The ability to do that because I have the ability to speak across the aisle on issues that both sides care about.
Hello, Motion viewers. It's our great pleasure to invite Kenny Xu. He's currently running for Congress, and his district is in North Carolina, District 2, which is actually my second hometown. So I'm very excited to invite Kenny. Hello, Kenny. Good afternoon.
Hi, Lydia. How are you?
Very good. And I would like you to first introduce yourself and your campaign to our audience.
I'm Kenny Xu. I'm running for Congress in North Carolina. And in a winnable district here. So there's a unique opportunity here to win. But here's a bit about me. Why should I deserve to win? Well, I was the one who fought Harvard's discrimination against Asian Americans. In case you guys didn't know, Harvard was the university that really discriminated against qualified Asian Americans to make room for lower qualified people of other races. And that's unfair. I fight for fairness. I want this to be a system based on merit. That's what I want. And I'm going to bring that mentality to Congress because right now our federal government continues to pass unfair policies, especially unfair towards Asian Americans. Biden and Kamala Harris don't even classify Asian Americans as a minority anymore. They want to give handouts only to Black populations and Hispanic populations. They don't care about Asian Americans. So, and they don't care about fairness. So I'm here to restore fairness. That's why I'm running. I helped to win that Harvard case, that lawsuit. Yes, you know, this is the time when we have to stand up for justice, and that's why I'm running for Congress.
You also published 2 best-selling books. So could you introduce your books to our audience?
I published 2 best-selling books. My first book is called An Inconvenient Minority. This is a book about the Harvard case, how Asian Americans rose up to stand against the most prestigious university in the world. And it's a very compelling story. I urge you to read it. My second book is called School of Woke, and it talks about how our K-12 education system is declining in this country. And unfortunately, it's very true. Because our math scores, our reading scores, they've been declining. They further declined after COVID. It's even worse for minority children. And we have to do something to fix it. So it also follows my policy solutions for how we can fix the problems in our school system. And, you know, I'm a renowned author. I talk regularly all across America about these things. And if you'd like to book me to speak, you can go to kennyshuforcongress.com and put your name and your email and what you'd like me to do.
That's great. I think you have a very strong background on education issue. I'm very excited to see a young man at your age can step forward and be our voice and fight for his country. So the question is, could you introduce about the district that you are running for? I know it's currently is NC, North Carolina, District 2, and it hosts the UNC, the college town, and also Duke, the prestigious university. And there are a lot of people pay great attention to education. But running for Congress is not only about education. So I would like to know what would be your most pressing issues if you elected congressman for each district?
I would say four things. One is education. That's my main issue. I'm very passionate about it. I want everybody to get high standards. I want to make sure there are no victims in our society. The second issue is immigration. I want to make sure that we secure our border, that people come here, they come here legally, they come here based on merit. I'm going to pass policies that will help the border to be more secure. Right now, it's basically a fence. We want to make it a wall. My third policy that I very much care about is fairness. I want to stand up so that people in government contracting and hiring know they're getting an equal opportunity to work based on merit. They're not being promoted because of diversity quotas. They're not being promoted because they're Black or Hispanic or a woman or gay. They're just being promoted based on their results. So I'm going to eliminate racial quotas from the federal government and from government contracting. And then my fourth issue that I care about is making sure our justice system is truly blind. Many have parent protesters, people who are speaking up, are getting unfairly investigated and even arrested by Department of Justice under the Biden-Harris administration. And I want to make sure that that does not continue.
That's a very good plan. And also, I think currently we are facing one of the highest inflation of this country. So what's your take of its inflation and the economy? Did you, if I remember correctly, your second major is economy?
Well, I majored in mathematics, but I know a fair bit about the economy because I run a small business called Color Us United, and we are an organization that stands up against divisive DEI policies. We've been fighting this for a while, but we're a business, right? You know, we have to make sure that our employees are treated fairly, that we're getting paid, that our donors are happy. And let me tell you right now, the cost of living right now is getting much too high. The gas prices are getting a lot higher than they were before. And a lot of the reason why that's the case is because we've been moving more of our labor force into government jobs, into jobs that the government has created for the purpose of creating jobs. But you need to create value to have a job. That's my view. America is strong when people are working in jobs that they're providing something of value back to, that will lower the price of goods, that will result in better supply chain, better economy. So my fixation on the economy is making sure that people are getting jobs based on merit, not because they're given a handout.
Actually, I saw a chart that since 80s in last century, the bureaucratic, the government size of American, also in education department, has expanded exponentially. So the big government became a big issue, gives a lot of a burden to people's daily life. So if you became a congressman, what kind of law you will pass to stop those kind of things and probably put it back to the right track?
One of the first policies that I'm going to do is make sure that our school systems are given funding, federal funding, based on their improvement of scores. That's what I want to make sure. Because right now, they're giving funding as handouts to school systems. Joe Biden spent $122 billion on giving schools extra money to fight learning loss, quote unquote, but that didn't stop learning loss at all. It only actually today, 2 years later, learning loss has stayed the same. It has not improved. Our educational situation has not improved, even though we spent a ton of money on it. So where did the money go? The money went to giving administrators raises. It went to DEI officers, equity officers. It went to new air conditioning systems. It didn't go to improve or stem the tide of learning loss in the pandemic. So I will make sure to give accountability to the Department of Education so that they're actually giving money based on student improvement, because we need to incentivize our schools to improve fast, or else our entire next generation is in danger.
Our North Carolina, we also host a big military base. Our next question I want to ask is about your view of Americans' national policy. Are you satisfied with Biden's move, like the Russia-Ukraine war? What's your view on those kind of issues?
I think Biden has been dithering about it. He should have made a decision 2 years ago on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He knew Russia was attacking Ukraine. We now know this. He should have done one of two things. Either he should let Russia do its thing, or he should immediately supply Ukraine with everything that they needed to stop Russia and prevent the war outright. Instead, he's dragged it on. He's kind of went on one hand this and on the other hand that. You can't do that in a war. You have to commit. When President Reagan faced the Soviet Union and people thought the Soviet Union was going to be here forever, President Reagan said no. He armed the United States. He armed our allies and forced the Soviet Union to keep up, which it obviously couldn't, and the Soviet Union collapsed. So that's what we have to do. If we want to stop our rivals from winning, we have to build things up early and we have to make decisions early. But Joe Biden is incapable of making early decisions. He is incapable of doing anything except standing on his beach and drinking Kool-Aid. So whatever the decision was, and I do think we were supposed to arm the Ukrainians years and years ago. By now, we've been dithering and dathering, and I think we need to take urgent action.
Actually, in Chinese community, there's a big debate about whether Americans should all in to continue support Ukraine, or whether we should recheck back and just like Donald Trump said, stop the war and 24 hours and bring peace could be another alternative choice. Also, a lot of Chinese Americans support it. So between those two strategies, do you think which way do you prefer, and what kind of method can we apply to achieve its goal?
I'm not a foreign policy expert, but here's what I would say. Stop the war as quick as you can by taking immediate action, one quick strike onto Russia to take out the troops with drone strikes and everything like that. And do it quickly and then try to negotiate a peace. But right now, we're not really at a peace through strength moment right now. Russia still has some momentum. Ukraine still has momentum. So it's always better to negotiate through a position of strength. So yeah, I mean, I think we need to, if we're going to support Ukraine, which the Biden administration signaled that he wants to support, and the United States were supposed to be behind, then we should darn attack the Russians and make sure that they are in a bad position and then attempt to negotiate.
Many of your supporters actually are parents, and they are curious about your upbringing. They are curious, how do you be an independent thinker in an environment probably very against conservative value?
Well, I had to learn to stand up for myself from an early age. I'm a Christian, and that makes a big part because I went to a very secular middle and high school. And I would get attacked for my faith. You know, people would make arguments. I would have to defend them. You know, people would say God doesn't exist. I have to say God does exist, and here's why. How can you have a world? How can you have a morality? How can you have a system of justice without God, who loves you, who actually cares about you, who has a sense of morality? So, you know, people didn't really know how to answer that. But, you know, I, from a very young age, you know, I had to protect myself and I had to protect my values for sure. And I do believe it is a work of God that he has put me in this position where now I have the opportunity to represent the many Americans who need help right now.
Thank you. But actually, like people in your age, more and more people in your age, they don't want to go to church. So what would be your advice to that people who are refuse to listen to God to change their mind?
Mostly people don't want to go to church because they're not convinced of its value. And I would say for the church to continue to speak to younger generations, we need to speak to issues right now that are issues that a lot of young Americans are facing. We face isolation, we face lack of community, we face depression, we face a college system that doesn't get us anywhere. It looks like we're just publishing paper after paper and nothing makes any impact. So we're facing a crisis on a lot of proportions, and churches need to address that. They need to aggressively reach out, and they need to say, you know, beyond, forget the rat race. Forget the rat race. Do what is in your heart. Do what is in your conscience. And I think if churches said that more, and they understand that God works through the hearts and consciences of many people, like God has worked through my conscience for a very long time, then I think more people will come to church.
Thank you. And also, at what point did you start to recognize you want to put politics as your future career? Because your background were from mathematics major, right?
That's right. Very recently, for a while, all I wanted to do was write books for a living. It was hard to make a career as an author, but I was able to venture into nonprofit, get some funding, get paid to fight DEI programs, which I care about fighting deeply. Then after winning the Harvard case, that was sort of the crown jewel of my activism and my advocacy, because finally we can make merit-based admissions, which I think should be implemented across the rest of society. But now I see this problem. How are we going to implement merit-based principles across the rest of society? And I realized the federal government has the power to do that, and the federal government right now isn't doing that. I know how to implement merit-based principles in society and to stand up for good education. And so that's why I decided to run for Congress.
Very good. Also, since you have strong mathematics background, I like math too. And if we look at the math, so I saw the average age for Congress is close to 60 years old. You're much younger than 60 years old, even not half away. So what makes you think now you are 26, it's time for you to stand out to run for Congress at such a young age?
By understanding the way that 60-year-old politicians work. When you're that age, you want to live a comfortable life, right? When you're that age, you're old, you have kids, you have grandchildren, you want to live a comfortable life. And I think that that's great, but you can't be a politician and want to live a comfortable life. That's just that you can't pass laws that benefit Americans and want to live a comfortable life. I've learned that a lot of wealthy 60-year-olds, they rely on money. Money talks to them. And although it's important for me to raise money for this campaign, and I am, going to ask you guys to contribute and support to my campaign at kennyshueforcongress.com, you cannot run a nation when people are throwing money at you personally so that you can pass laws for them and for their friends. You cannot run a nation like that. That is a seal of corruption right there. I'm not saying any particular politician is corrupt, although I have a few ideas, but you need someone youthful and principled to be able to fight the fights for all Americans. And that's why I'm running.
What's your winning strategy for the primary? What kind of help do you need from your supporters?
The district that I live in right now is pretty blue. It voted for Deborah Ross by 16 points. Now, I have an extra advantage. The advantage is that the Republicans are redistricting this year, and they intend to redistrict in a way that will make it harder for Democrats to win. So I'm going to make a final decision on the district once the redistricting comes out, right? Because when I run and when I ask for you guys' support, I run to win. I'm not running just to make my name out there. I'm running because me and my campaign team have talked over a strategy to win, which includes direct-to-text messages, it includes emails, it includes grassroots support around here, none of which require actually that much money, but I do need to raise $200,000. So if you guys could contribute $200, $300 to help the campaign, you are paying for direct outreach so that we can help to secure America and make it a better place.
Compared to other primary candidates, what makes you the strongest candidate?
That I have experience. And you might say, how do you have experience? You're 26 years old, but I have experience fighting the system for your values. I spent 8 years fighting the Harvard case, writing a book about it, campaigning on the media about it, lobbying politicians about it. At UNC, where I live near UNC Medical School. They were asking their doctors to sign DEI pledges. They were promoting doctors based on race. They're doing all kinds of things that is harmful from the perspective of promoting the best qualified doctor. I led the campaign to fight back against those DEI policies. And I got the UNC Board of Trustees to rescind their DEI framework at the medical school. So I have a record of success of fighting. And the reason why is because I never stop pushing. I never stop working for you guys. And when you find me as the candidate, you understand that I'm going to work for you guys. You guys elected me. I'm going to work for you.
Thank you. So since you are running our district, currently it's 60% of Democrats. I think if you want to win, you need to convince a lot of swing voters and central Democrats to support you. And I think your experience of lobbying UNC Medical School is a good start. And could you let us know more about what's your strategy to apply this kind of experience to convince voters to support you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have an appeal even to independents. And why? It's because independents care about education right now. And they actually trust Republicans more than Democrats on education. A new poll showed that, more independents trust Republicans than Democrats now in education. And the reason why is very simple. Democrats have been in control of the education system for the past 40 years, and they haven't shown the results. The racial achievement gap has not closed. We spent 3 times as much money on public education, and we have not budged our test scores, or we have not budged our student achievement upwards. So I have real policy solutions to fix that by holding accountable federal funding to school improvement, and by making sure that kids learn phonics, reading literacy, and math the right way early on in elementary school. So we have to get back to that sort of education system. And if you're an independent voter, I believe you will side with me.
Okay, sounds very promising. So for the primary, how many debates are they going to hold?
I don't know if they're holding debates in the primary, but I know for a fact I'm debating at UNC Law School on October 4th against a professor named Irving Joyner. And we're going to be discussing the affirmative action case, critical race theory. We're going to be discussing policies to help disadvantaged kids and my ideas for that and his ideas for that. And I urge you guys, if you are in the North Carolina area, to come and show your support. It is October 4th at 12 p.m., UNC Law School. Look out, follow me on Twitter, because I will send out the exact room on Twitter. My Twitter is @KennyMShu, @KennyMXU.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I think is that the same debate it planned to hold on the day just before the UNC brutal killing of the professor?
Yes, unfortunately, we actually had scheduled this debate for early on in September, and then a shooter came and shot a professor, and the debate got canceled. So we had to postpone it. But it is fortunately now you guys get a heads up, and you can come with an earlier time lead.
Okay, so since we talked about that unfortunate tragedy, I think that that's a big issue about mental health, especially for young generation. Also from the immigrant community, it starts to become more and more serious issue. Recently, we heard a couple of very unpleasant news in the Chinese community. I think they also facing challenge. So could you talk a little bit more about what's your view of the mental issue, health problem, and how to help young people and also immigrants who needed to know his country and integrate to American life?
Well, we have always had mental health issues in this country. One thing that we haven't had always is mass shootings. And as more attention and more media has been put to mass shootings, mentally ill people have decided to take up a gun and start shooting people. That has become their method of promoting themselves, promoting their message. And this is why we need a strong police force, a police force that is capable, a local police force that is capable of monitoring social media for poor posts, a police force that is well-trained, that can respond to incidents, such as at UNC, right? A guy shot a professor, but police were able to quickly contain him so that no one else got killed. It's very hard to stop one-on-one interactions, right? Because people deserve their right to privacy, and sometimes that will produce violence, but you can stop shootings from becoming mass shootings. In terms of mental health, especially among immigrant kids, that's a big issue right now. I feel for a lot of international students coming from China, coming from Korea. I had a friend who experienced depression when he came from Korea over here, because it's just such a huge culture shock, right? It's such a huge culture shock. One of the issues is that when people's language skills are not up to par here in America, they can't communicate with the wider public, then they feel very isolated because they don't know the language. So one of the things I'm going to make it mandatory for international students to come here is you have to be fluent in English.
Yeah, right. And I think that the woke culture just do not emphasize to learn English and to learn American history and the culture. I think that's the wrong direction. I hope people like you start to change its tendency and bring common sense to our education system and many other aspects of the policy. What do you want our audience to help you win?
Guys, just spread the word. Just spread the word. Make noise among your Asian American community. I don't make a huge deal about this, but I am the first Asian American Republican who has a shot at winning a congressional seat in America. So if you stand for conservative values, if you stand for hard work, if you stand for education, and if you care about your Asian American friends, you should support me, because I have the track record of fighting against those policies that are unfair, especially towards Asian Americans. But look, I can be a little intense, right? Just spread the word, share on social media about my candidacy, get people to my page, Kenny Xu for Congress, where you can see my values and my platform, KennyXuForCongress.com. That is Kenny XU, like an X-ray, for Congress.com. That's how you're going to get to really know me. And then, of course, I am seeking to raise $200,000 for my campaign, and I can't do it without the support of ordinary people who are making donations like yourself. So please consider doing that.
Who is your favorite politician?
My favorite politician? Oh, wow. Living or dead?
Doesn't matter, just including everybody.
Oh, well, I mean, Abraham Lincoln. He knew how to negotiate with people. He knew how to convince people to win them onto his side. But, back then, being explicitly anti-slavery was a tough sell for a lot of people, but he was able to balance different opinions and convince people to join his side. That's what a good politician should do. They should convince people who otherwise weren't convinced to join their side. And I have the ability to do that because I have the ability to speak across the aisle on issues that both sides care about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.